Hello again to all my friends.
Face.
So
We are in the Dutch oven of evil.
The way he grins.
You think this might have been an early place where the evil wall fight was intended to be?
don't know.
I mean, because they obviously, when they were doing things early on, they completely reshuffled things.
Yeah.
And there was an evil face on the map. So I was wondering, you know, maybe this is where it was originally. You missed the fight. I can't respect you anymore. You're gonna have to make up for this now. Getting closer. All right. Camera angles, you suck at yourself.
Yeah, this guy is poorly positioned.
Yeah.
Although they're really bad in the demon wall fight. Demon's Gate.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting if they did a remake to sort of do different things with the battles. Like in Final Fantasy 12, they played a lot with like status effects and stuff, and you can get through most of this game just hacking and slashing, but in 12 you really have to think about things.
I've never used a status effect in this game out of necessity.
Yeah.
Only for fun.
I hate status effects.
Stat effects.
I'm
Except-
very much hack and slash. That's what I like to do. I don't even like to use magic unless I really have to.
Yeah.
Very
Even
rarely has status effects been useful in the series. The few times that they have been a couple of battles against bosses in Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VIII, where you could zombie most bosses,
Oh yeah.
or use healing on undead, you know. Final Fantasy IX, which if you used a tent in battle, would put every possible negative status effect on an enemy.
Yep.
And 10, in which the zombie exploit is even better because it works on the final boss. Not
Yeah, I
even
mean, they were pretty important in 12 and 13.
Yeah.
I've never seen the later levels of Aerith limits.
Yeah.
I knew what they were and what they did, but I've never actually seen them because I never felt like raising them.
You know,
I've never gotten
status
past
effects-
Fury Brand.
The status effects in 13 aren't so much, I mean, they are status effects, but they're not, they don't have the same sort of feel as they do in the other games. Because first off, all the status effects are like, Bioga, in that they all do damage. So even if they're not poisoned, they're still getting some damage.
Right.
And second off, because they're almost always straight up like, oh yeah, you do more damage now. As opposed to attacks sometimes don't happen or stuff like that.
Yeah, they're mostly stat driven.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I'm reminded of Xenogears, in which Citan actually had some of the most useful spells in the game, simply because he had the ability to elementally shift the weaknesses and defenses of your party and your enemies, which made him the king of creating unstoppable juggernauts. Now, there's no, elemental defense shifting in 13, but there is, You take more damage as a rule, you take more magic damage, you take more damage from elemental properties. We've gotten all of you, all three of these. Have fun, my 2 Ravengers and my Commando. Especially since, pretty much, ironically, your best Ravager in the game, Lightning, is going to be doing physical damage most of the time.
I think in...
Song so sad.
Even though there aren't classes in this game, I think they've tried to include them, like with the enemy skill materia. That's your classic blue mage.
Oh yes, there's class emulation in this game. Of course, technically speaking, even though there aren't classes in this game, what's in this game are classes. And we can tell that because when Cloud got ported over to Final Fantasy Tactics, he was his own special class. Which kind of stunk, but it had great abilities. If you had a short charge attached. Also, he's part of an exploit that lets you one-turn the final boss. One of many, naturally. But it's just seriously one of the best fire and forgets of that game, because you just choose his Clim Hazard, which does damage equal to the amount of HP the boss already has lost.
Yeah.
And for some reason the boss starts out with far below his max HP, to the point of having about little less than half of it.
I still haven't played the city.
Yeah, as I get older, this scene actually affects me more than Aerith's death scene.
Yeah. I really like there's an OC remix of this theme by Ruben Key. It's Ascension to Cosmo Canyon.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Beautiful.
He's pacing in the air.
Like actually try and do something. Am I just sort of providing excuses for myself not to do anything? Yes, I am.
He's too old.
Does it explain this whole thing pretty well in Before Crisis? Like the whole what happened to his father and his mother?
No, this is not covered in BC at all.
Oh.
Red's
This
chapter
was before that, anyway.
Yeah, Red's chapter in Before Crisis is one of the most headache-inducing bits of Before Crisis. I've had many an argument with Trace over it, not because I don't think it's the stupidest thing ever, but because he insists that it is, technically speaking, canonically impossible to reconcile with the series, and I say that it is, provided we assume that everybody is stupid and or an asshole, which is basically the same thing. It's just the difference between it's outright contradicted and everybody's an asshole, therefore it can happen. But it basically, up until like 5 years before the game, maybe less, not only was Red not explicitly not the last of his kind, there was somebody in the village with him that he knew that was a female, and she got sealed away. And she's sealed away during this game, and...
That howl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The howl is the saddest part of this.
I think it's like
His
sometimes he
little stone
howls and then
tears.
he roars in Advent Children rather than
Yeah.
howls.
Oh, I'm sure he can do both, but
He is
He
a
does
large
the-
cat. Large cats can both howl, mewl, and roar.
he does the howling animation as his mourning at Aerith's death. You know, depending on who's on your
Yeah.
team, they'll each do something, but they don't play the sound effect, and I wish they did.
Huh. I never noticed that. I guess I never had him in my party.
He walks to the edge of the altar and does that same animation, and I always
Yeah.
wished that they would put the sound effect over it, because then it'd be even sadder. He's just one of my favorite reactions. Not counting Vincent's like seizing and sticking straight up in the air.
The PC version glitch. Where he tap dances through Aerith's head. he pirouettes with a ballet flourish, kicking her in the face.
And walks over to Cloud and kicks him in the chest and then walks
Yeah.
away.
Those
If anyone hasn't seen it, you can find it on YouTube. It's pretty
Yes,
amazing.
it is the traditional Turk mourning dance. That
Takes
is,
all of the seriousness out of the scene.
that is my camera. I'm sticking to it. It's the traditional Turk mourning dance. Because the Turks aren't just a Shinra operative. They're actually a secret clan of ninja. Like the Sheikah, only better dressed. Yeah, now I'm just making shit up again. Time to indiscriminately loot this town of hippies.
Be sure to come back later for the full cure material.
Cosmo Canyon's sort of the only place that you'd think like that's all there is to it. It's
Yeah. Cosmo Canyon is basically the whole of Cosmo Canyon. Every other town, including Lower Junon, has to have more.
Yeah, it like even implies it has more, but Cosmo
Yeah.
Canyon does. Unless it like wraps around the cliff back there.
oh
That's
yeah,
pretty much it.
yeah.
It might a little, you never know, but it's honestly, it's implied as being pretty much stark and...
And I've said before, one thing I really liked about Dirge of Cerberus was the to scale calm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of how it's still
And
pretty
so what
friggin'
other-
big, it's just so next to Midgar that it comes off being so small.
And so what are the other two things you like about Dirge of Cerberus? That it ends, and what? No. Sorry, Dirge of Cerberus is not the worst game ever made, but it is very much a burying the lead sort of game. Because its best aspect was at the very beginning. Full-size calm.
Mm.
You know, like, they got up to the edge level, and then they just sort of went, well, now where do we go from here?
I did
Fuck.
find myself like by the end sort of having like a fist pump moment, like you're like, yeah, come on.
The biggest problem
Yeah,
with
the being able to look around Edge was cool too. You're right. Yeah, that's the first two levels right there.
Yeah.
3, I guess.
The biggest problem with Dirge of Cerberus is, and this is a bizarre statement, was that it was only Vincent's game. I understand that it's supposed to be Vincent's game, but just from the opening teasers, we had gotten the implicit promise of, you know, a lot of people being able to be played as.